Good evening. Welcome to St. James Chapel. Thank you for your patience. We are delighted to have you here this evening to welcome Pat Weber to discuss the stone walls of Hyde Park and their preservation. However, some housekeeping first of all. The first thing you should notice is that there are two main exits where you can get out of here. The first is that door straight behind you, and the next is that door to that side. So take your pick. You can get out of either way pretty quickly. Also, there is one restroom that is available right here. You just go in through out this door, and it's the first door on your right, and then an immediate left. So please use that restroom. Following the talk, there will be a reception, and we'll say more about that. But we ask you after the talk that there will be a question and answer session, and then some announcements. So please stay seated for all that, and then the reception, and then you can talk with Pat afterwards as well. Having said all that, let's get going. In 1974, with assistance from the Dutchess County Department of Planning, Pat Weber applied to the New York Preservation League's Unique New York program for a grant to help restore and preserve Hyde Park's stone walls. They were awarded a $1,500 grant, which was used to establish a subcommittee of the Hyde Park Visual Environment Committee to make repairs to the stone walls, to make local masons aware of the project, and to garner their support and to create a slide presentation called Hyde Park's Stone Walls. The slideshow details the rich history and importance of the stone walls in the area. More importantly, the stone walls have received much needed attention and still stand as silent witnesses of a bygone era. Pat Weber served as a founding member and president of the Hyde Park Environment Committee, and it is with great pleasure that we welcome her tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to see all of you here tonight. I think it's very special that you would come out to something that sounded so dry, and kind of rocky. But I just have loved the stone walls of Hyde Park all of my life. And so it has been my privilege to be able to work on this slide presentation. Would you believe it was done 50 years ago? 50 years, I can't believe that. But in any event, we shall go ahead and see how we do. Sometimes I don't always match, my script doesn't match the slides, but we'll give it a whirl. The Hyde Park Stonewall Committee, in conjunction with Unique New York and the New York Preservation League, presents this story of the stone walls of Hyde Park, their history, construction, the people who built them 100 years ago, and the people who are rebuilding and preserving these sculptures in stone today. Good fences make good neighbors. These words were probably in the minds of the early landowners and farmers of Hyde Park 200 years ago, when the first farmer or Indian moved and put into place the first stone to clear his field for his cows or crops. And when the early Dutch settler began to mark off with stone his vast land holdings, taking pride in his land and using stone to create boundaries of lasting beauty. Stone walls of the type found in Hyde Park are completely unknown in the West, but are a prime feature of Dutchess County, New York, and the New England landscape. Much of the stone used for building walls and dwellings in Hyde Park was native fieldstone and cut bluestone. Some had to be imported by barge, downriver from Kingston. Walls that were built to clear fields were a matter of removing natural slate and glacier-produced stone that abounds in this part of Dutchess County. Two basic methods used to construct farm walls were placing one stone on two and placing three stones on one. Old walls in Hyde Park generally followed the contour of the land and thus became, through a natural process of shifting and aging, growth of mosses and lichen, structures that are organically pleasing to the eye, natural barriers against erosion, and a refuge for animals and plant life. Stone walls are an integral part of early Hyde Park life. Don't you love that photo? That's of the Vanderbilt Wall being built, and reflected both the talents of their builders and the lifestyles found in the community. Early stone wall builders must be thought of as craftsmen who took a real pride in the construction of walls that were as individual as the needs for different types of walls. Along the Albany Post Road, both estate and modest income families use their walls not only as property markers, but also as a place to sit for the family portrait, a meeting spot for courting couples, and perhaps as markers for the start and finish of the town bicycle race. In 1900, the Hyde Park blacksmith shop was witnessing the beginning and the end of an era in transportation. The Albany Post Road through Hyde Park, north to Albany and south to New York City, was still a hard dirt thoroughfare for horse, carriage, and cart in 1900. Stone walls lined the road through the hamlet, and there were numerous inns and churches along the route for the tired traveler. This home was originally the home of Jacobus Stoutenberg II, son of the first white settler who came to Hyde Park circa 1742. The Thatcher House, built by Martin Dopp and occupied by the Berg and Stoutenberg families, no longer stands, but some walls may remain on the property. The bridge along the Crum Elbow Creek on the Albany Post Road was of wooden construction over stone until 1900, when it was destroyed by fire. The new bridge of stone, with a gift of $18,000 from Frederick W. Vanderbilt, was begun around 1920. Can you imagine what it cost the Park Service to rebuild that whole wall a few years ago? This wall and bridge is very much in use along Route 9 today and is a fine example of craftsmanship in both bridge building and stonework. Early in the 19th century, barns of wood siding, sometimes with slate roofs, were complements to the natural stone used in the walls surrounding the fields and roadbeds of the farmers' holdings. In some cases, rural stone walls were supplemented by wooden rails, and later barbed wire barriers were added across the top to keep stock in the fields. Let us imagine here, as Robert Frost did in his poem Mending Wall, two farmers talking about the reason for building a good wall. He is all pine and I am all orchard. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I build a wall, I'd ask what I was walling in or walling out. Through the years, many wealthy families purchased land along the Hudson River, building large estates surrounded by stone fences. The James Roosevelts, shown on horseback here, were one of the early families to rebuild on the site of a previous home. Landscaping great fields with rows of trees and stone and iron gates. The Morgan Estate and Wolves with stone gates is north of the Roosevelt Estate on Route 9. Mary Newbold Morgan took great pride in keeping her stone walls in good repair. The walls of the Morgan Estate were repaired in 1965 by Harvey and Richard Maston, Hyde Park Masons. The walls were topped with stone set in concrete. And I'm having trouble because this is out of order now. Let me see if I can catch up. In March 1797, a highway regulation was passed providing for the placement of stone milestones. More than 40 stone markers were erected at this time. The estate families were responsible for the placing of many of the still existing milestone markers along the walls, most of which stand today between Poughkeepsie and the Columbia County line. The markers that remain were saved due to the efforts of the Dutchess County Historical Society, of which Franklin D. Roosevelt was a member, who in 1935 had them reset in concrete with laid-up fieldstone around them, as the markers were made of sandstone and were rapidly disintegrating. This is the marker that stands south of Watson Place in the stone wall on the west side of the road. It reads 87 miles to New York, 5 miles to Poughkeepsie. A little further north, near the Dominion Camp entrance, another marker reads 90 miles to New York. We will now travel the route taken by 6 generations of Hyde Park families, farmers, merchants, estate owners, and travelers from Albany to New York City and back. A road through Hyde Park edged by signatures in stone. The walls as they exist today, some standing as they were built, others, wow, excuse me, this happens. Others falling prey to a changing environment. Entering Hyde Park on the Albany Post Road from the south, I have lost, Grant, most of the slides here. And okay, we'll go. The boarding the Roosevelt Estate gradually give way to walls from the Morgan and Rogers and Vanderbilt estates, fronting recently built homes of the village. On the east side of the Post Road, walls are beginning to show signs of disrepair. Let's see if we can catch up. Forsythia and White Pine once crowded the lazy contours of the walls bordering the Thatcher home, which was demolished in 1972 to make way for a proposed fast food restaurant. I do have to apologize, but we'll just continue and look at the nice pictures. Let's see, this is, we're talking here about the type of stones. Some are round, some are square. And here we are working to build walls together. That is my son, who was probably 5 or 6 now. He is 6'4" now. And you can see here the walls start sometimes with small stones and end up very big. Sometimes they start just the reverse with large stones on the bottom, small stones on the top. Stone and wood gate to the Vanderbilt Farms and Stables, the former Hyde Park Playhouse, are a good example of varied color stones capped with blue stones. And again, you can see a lot of the different marks. Now this doesn't seem to be working, Rudy. Can we go forward? I can't seem to make it go forward. I want to go forward to like 127. Oh, okay. Now is it going forward? It seems to go forward and back. What we are trying to do is preserve our heritage in stone for future generations. And at that time, the Hyde Park Stonewall Committee was beginning the process of having broken and vandalized walls repaired, continuing the tradition of wall building in our town. We present this slide program so that you become aware of the beauty and importance of these walls. Let us continue the task of mending wall, of neighbors meeting at spring mending time, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us as we go. To each the boulders that have fallen to each, some are loaves, and some so nearly balls that we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. Thank you. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to, he's not here, but there's a gentleman named Don McTurnan, a retired historian now at the National Park Service at the Vanderbilt site, who provided original photographs from the Charles S. Pearsall photo collection at the FDR Library. And James Spratt, who was the County Commissioner of Public Works at the time of Route 9 expansion, and who retained the stone walls that would have been buried otherwise as they expanded the road. Bill Speed, who was the photographer who did some wonderful pictures for us. And the Hyde Park Visual Environment Committee today continues its effort to preserve the walls. And I'd like to thank especially, and I wish he was here tonight, Michael Dupree, who is the chairperson of the Planning Board of Hyde Park, for continuing to require site plans along Route 9 to maintain and/or include stone walls as a part of their site plan development, and to Sue DiLorenzo for asking this to be shown, to Grant Ferris, to cheat sheet, well, and to, oh, it did, okay. Could you get that for me? Or not? Okay. Oh, okay, thank you, Mr. Chuck. Rudy Knackle, Grant Ferris, and again, a gentleman named John Ainsley, who is the archivist at Marist College. And Margie Spratt encouraged me to put this down in their archives, and that is where the original slide set is. And so I thank you all for coming. I do hope that you'll look at the walls with greater appreciation. And it has been my pleasure to, even though we were a bit mixed up in our slides. Thanks for your patience.
We do have some time for some questions. If anybody has questions, Rudy will go around the audience. Wait until he brings you the microphone.
Does anyone have a question? I'd be happy to try to answer something.
In the beginning of your slideshow, there was a lovely slide of a body of water with a high stone wall in the background. Do you know where that was taken?
It is the Crum Elbow Creek that goes through the Vanderbilt estate and underneath Route 9. It was one time the town water supply. But if you will look, most of the pond, it comes down from East Park all the way right down through Hyde Park, Pine Woods Road. It just keeps wandering down through the Vanderbilt estate. And if you ride through the estate, you will see it off to the side. Look at the stone wall. And if you are coming down the hill into Vanderbilt, look back and you'll see that curve of the stone bridge. And it is that Crum Elbow Creek, I believe.
Okay. And my other question is, do you know where do the stone walls stop in the United States? You mentioned it was Dutchess County, New York, and then New England. Not found out west, obviously, because the stone's not available there, but how far down, like maybe along the East Coast, does the stonework go?
The area that we looked at to preserve, that's not answering your question, but we thought from Vanderbilt Estate to the top of Teller Hill, we would try to keep those walls. The stone walls, if you look along, they go through Stottsburg, they're in Rhinebeck, Red Hook, north toward Tarrytown. I don't recall there being so much stone down there, but it just seems to me that between the Roosevelts, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, and all of those families used to clear their fields and or import stone. I will always be grateful to FDR for recommending the architecture for our grade schools, high schools, library, post office, all those wonderful buildings that are here. But most of all, I just think that they are the signature for Hyde Park. And so to have them continue to be saved and restored is a marvelous gift to us all, I believe. Anyone else? Sue.
I just wanted to thank Pat for coming all the way from Florida just to give us this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Hi, Pat.
Hi.
I just want to know, do you know who did these stone walls that are right in the center of town on the west side of 9? Who built them?
Where?
Well, it would be beginning of, what's it, Crimmel down
Well,
to,
those were part of the Rogers estate.
okay?
And the Rogers were quite prominent. When I was a kid here, Cromwell was the mansion, and Brett will know this better than I, but all of those walls were built by the Rogers estate, and that land was all vacant. We used to play baseball in the fields where the cleaners and that kind of thing are on the west side. And all of Cromwell Acres was vacant, and then thankfully the Goldens came along and built housing after World War II so that people were able to live in Hyde Park, and Hyde Park just continued to grow. Did that answer your question, huh?
Sure.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Well, just, Sue?
So who was responsible for fixing those walls?
Very good question. We went round and round with that. And Scenic Hudson did a wonderful survey. And so there is a map that shows every stone wall, who the owner is, and that kind of thing. But the stone walls belong to the community. They are on essentially county or state land. And so sometimes if you catch somebody that has had an accident and really wrecked a wall, you can help get some of that insurance. But on the whole, it is all volunteer money, and that's what the Visual Environment Committee has been able to do over the years. Part of their membership and their raising money goes to whatever they can do to help repair the wall. But mostly, again, it's Michael Dupree, head of the planning board, who has required developers to either repair the walls in front of their new developing property, or they repair them themselves. And they also include new stone walls in various site plans. So, near the old Grand Union site, they built that little stone wall thing. It looks like a little park or something like that, which is very nice. And I know that in front of Pete's Famous, when it was there, they required those walls to be built. So, it's very nice that from various angles, people have been able to help to preserve those walls. And it really is a skill to build them. I mean, it was very difficult to try and show how to build a wall. And to watch someone who really knows how to put those stones together, put in the little chinks and that kind of thing, it's a craft. It's wonderful and very expensive today. Anyone else? I'm sure that Father Chuck has some announcements.
We do.
And thank you very much. Thank you.
Once again, we thank Pat for coming all the way from Florida to grace us with those wonderful pictures and presentation. They are an important part of this community, so thank you again for that. John Golden, would you like to say something to him?
I did have a little gift for Patty Malone.
It's
Oh,
here,
here you
Brad.
go.
Oh, thank you
Patty,
very
thanks
much.
for coming back. I bet one of my best pals.
Oh,
You
thank you.
enjoyed it well, Patty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Couple of announcements. You'll notice inside your programs there are also flyers for the Mother's Day tea, which it sells out quickly. So you want to start ordering your tickets soon. That's in May. But before that, and without having to get tickets, there is another event coming up next in 2 weeks, Thursday, November 19th. Not November. March. Thank you. March 19th. We are in the season of Lent, and so St. James is offering a Lenten quiet evening. It is a 3-hour evening with one of our Hyde Park neighbors, actually, as the leader, Father Masoud Ibn Saidullah, who is an amazing retreat leader. It will be at St. James in the parish hall. It will start with a little potluck meal. So if you come, please bring a small little dish to pass to share, and it will help you really roll into the Lenten season. So that's those are 2 events coming up that you can look forward to at St. James. This is not going to be like Sunday where we do announcements for a half hour. But I did want to let you know that we are delighted that you're here. Thank you for doing this. Celebrate and share the information. The final Fireside Chat for the 2020 season is, I believe, April 2nd, also Thursday. It will be regular speakers, Al Vink and Linda Boucher, who have spoken here many times now. And they are Roosevelt experts and bring more of that expertise next month. It's in your programs, so keep those, mark your calendars, and share it with your friends. If there are no other announcements that I need to make, we want to thank you for coming one more time, and join us for the reception, which is right here in the reading room. Thank you. I'm going to turn the lights on.